When I got this note saying this is my talk for the day, my ADHD brain looked at only the first part and said science of systems. So I hadn't prepared for the next wave. And yesterday when I was telling Sarita this is what my presentation is going to be, my talk is going to be, she said, what happened to the next wave? That's the most important piece. So now, of course, you do what everybody does, start looking up, what is the next wave? Damn. And I looked up, I'm in healthcare, and this is where I look at things really, really well. So of course, what is the next wave of biology? And as you can see, the next wave of biology says the convergence of not just biological sciences, but of technology. Pretty much the new wave that Shalu didn't really want to go ahead and talk about, machine learning, AI, all of that. But that's just biology. I mean, what matters to us is medicine, right? And I did that also. Next wave of medicine. And what's the next wave of medicine? The next wave of medicine also says, it is precise, personal, preventive, proactive, whatever you want to say, and enabled by technology, machine learning, genomics, all of that. But is medicine what we really want? So I said, let me look up once again, next wave of health. Even when you look at the next wave of health, pretty much it's the same thing. It's about convergence, it's about technology, it's about machine learning, it's about genomics, it's about a whole lot of science and technology coming together. It's not just the main discipline anymore. It is about a convergence of things. So, I mean, if you were to look at it, so the next wave I put health there, but if you just move even health away, and if you look at anything actually, it's about interconnected systems. It is about convergence of distinct disciplines. It is about interdependent systems. You can't have interconnected systems and distinct systems converging without interdependent systems. And I think this is, while you're talking about systems and all of that, it's the most classic is what's happening with Mr. Trump, right? The president. He thinks he can change tariffs and stop us from buying oil. What kind of an interdependent system is that? So those are the flaws of interdependent systems too. You can modify one and you can have an effect in something else. Or the H-1B for that matter. He wants to make America great again, and he's increased the price. Well, for all you know, it could make India great again. But this is what the next wave is about. The next wave is about a lot of things converging together. And it's this proactive, personalized, preventive, or proactive, personalized that you saw in health. It's just not about health. It is about people in IFB. They're getting personal. They're getting precise. You come here twice, and they'll probably have a better list of what you like and what you don't like. You need to know about your customers. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? You need to get personal. You need to get proactive. Is he going to come in? You send cards for your customers' birthdays or anniversaries. You're proactive about things. And what data and technology allows you to do is get these things in place. For me, when I was talking to a group of ladies, as I said, I'm going to talk to a really large set of ladies. And somebody that has shaped my life heavily is a lady called Lynn Margulis. And I'm sure, does anybody here know of Lynn Margulis? See, nobody, right? I was wondering the same thing. So Lynn is probably the person who pretty much shaped or gave us a completely different view of evolutionary biology. Have you all heard of Gaia hypothesis? Okay, one hand there. Have you all heard of, her husband was a gentleman called Carl Sagan. Do you know of Carl Sagan? The gentleman wrote Cosmos. So she did the others. Carl Sagan went out of space. She started looking inwards. So in fact, she wrote a book called Microcosmos. Sulin is pretty much like Rosalind Franklin, Ada Lovelace. These are all names to reckon in the field of science. And in some sense, Ada was also somebody in the field of business to some extent. Ada Lovelace, Marie Curie, all these are phenomenal names in pushing boundaries of science. So where I'm going with this is this piece of interconnected systems But she and James Lovelock created this theory called the Gaia hypothesis, which looked at the whole planet as an interconnected system. The theory was that, all of us, organic beings, and not just humans, all organic beings, and even the inorganic ones, pretty much live together and work together, impacting each other. And this created conditions for life on Earth. This created conditions for life to flourish. It described Earth as a living body in the form of a planet. So this was her first piece, and I'll bring it back to business. Bear with me for now. So this was her first piece, the Gaia hypothesis. The second, like I said, was about microcosmos. Carl Sagan went out, she went in, but she spoke about, or she was the first person who proposed this theory that our origins, when people ask us where did we originate from or who our ancestors are, we pretty much say monkeys, right, chimpanzees. But she went much beyond. She said our origins are in bacteria. Our origins are in much smaller things, and it's, what we have as mitochondria is bacteria in some sense. What we have as chloroplasts, those things that convert sunlight into energy, is bacteria. And so these origins is what brought about the evolution of Earth. In fact, now if you start looking at what she was trying to say, this is system of view. Do you see that? If you had to look at the entire blue piece there, but you see the yellow there, right? There's 23,000 genes. You know how many microbial genes you have? I didn't put the answer there yet. And this is where Lin's hypothesis theory comes in. What science now tells us that we have about 2 million to 20 million microbial genes. It's about 100 times to 1,000 times more. That's the system of view. If you look at the number of cells that you have, today science tells us that you have about 30 trillion human cells and about 39 trillion bacterial cells. That's the system of view. You're not just you anymore. That's what we realize. We are an interconnected system. In fact, we are so deeply connected, not just internally, but outside as well, or rather the other way around. We are so deeply connected, not just externally, but also internally. To such an extent that the fundamental actors, or when we say we are human, what makes us now seems to be non-human actors. So these concepts of symbiosis is of different things living together, of cooperation and emergence. Emergence is a science where many things happen. The sum of the parts are greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But it's about relooking at business, if you were to look at it. So when Darwin told you about competition, survival of the fittest, Lin spoke about symbiosis. It's not about survival of the fittest. You work together. It's not about competing. It's about cooperation. The biggest transitions in our evolution, unlike what we thought was fighting, was competing, really is not the case. It is about cooperation. It is about working together. That's what we learn from a business point of this. It is about 2 and 2 not making 4, possibly much more. That's the science of emergence. So from a business angle, we look at these things completely differently. And this is what the next wave is about. It's not about competition. It's not just about competition. It's about working together. What can happen if many of you work together in this room? Maybe that's what you need to look at. How many of you can cooperate together? How many of you can build new business ideas by working together among the people here? So my own journey I moved from working in smart cities, from telecom to smart cities, to now working with microbes and bacteria and cells. And this is where, when you look at symbiosis, if you were to extend it, it's about working in a transdisciplinary space. It's not just about one discipline. You need to have expertise in multiple disciplines. You can't have saying that I'm an accountant and that's all I'm going to look at. Technology allows you. Systems allow you. And even more than that, you should start looking at building, as the system says, as the thing says, either groups of people or groups of systems to enhance what you want to do. And then this whole science of emergence, like I said, emergence is, and ant colonies represent emergence. Emergence is both a field of philosophy and a field of science. That says, typically when what could be 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, it's not. 1 plus 1 is equal to 11. Lives, our lives are examples of emergent systems, and colonies, our mind. Look at how our mind is. It's neurons firing, but many neurons firing together and many other processes together, and you have consciousness. That's emergence. And that's what you need to look at. You just need to look at, moving from one system to multiple systems, to making sure that when you move to multiple systems, the power is much more than that. So this is what we do. We look at what the distinct story written in each person's microbiome. In fact, I didn't use the word microbiome to tell somebody, because I don't know how many of you know what microbiomes are. But microbiome is an ecosystem, and a microbiome is a microbial ecosystem, or system of really microbial things. But what we do is we look at, in physics, I'm sure most of you are familiar with theoretical physics. All our greatest minds come from theoretical physics. All our, Einstein, all of that are largely theoretical physicists. But nobody is doing theoretical biology or theoretical medicine. But that's what technology allows us to do today. Technology allows us to model medical systems. It allows us to look at your state of your cells or your microbiome today, and say that, hey, with a little bit of mathematical modeling, we can now predict how you will be 6 months from now or a year from now. These are linear things that you can do. We can optimize, saying that, hey, there are different people here. You have one biome, but very different from your spouse or your friends. How can it be optimized better? So these are possibilities, because you start integrating different fields of different disciplines. It doesn't have to be science, and sometimes you really need to integrate art too. You have to be creative enough to tell somebody, hey, this is not really right. So it's multiple disciplines coming together. You all heard of social networks. Have you ever thought of applying social networks of living systems, of cells? You have a diseased cell. What could be its friends? What could be its enemies? What is the first degree, second degree order of connection between cells? Those are things that we model. Those are things that we can model because of an understanding, a deeper understanding, not just of one discipline or one science, but of multiple disciplines. And that's what you need to do. Start integrating different systems. Again, I don't know whether to show this or not. I'm sure somebody will say, why do you show this? We look at how microbes now play a critical role, are now seen to play a critical role in so many of your health conditions. We ourselves look at, the gut-brain connection extensively. Charlotte spoke about mental health among founders. Sleep, stress, energy largely starts in your gut. Your primary controller is, in fact, when you talk about systems, there is what is now called a CNS and an ENS, a nervous system in your gut. So you start looking at that, and then, okay, I'm digressing. But things like cancer, things like cardiovascular health, all of that seem to have, or rather be impacted by these different microbes. We've been talking to skincare companies on how, by managing your gut, it actually impacts your skin. I'm sure all of you here are concerned deeply about how your skin is, wrinkles, all of that. In fact, one of the earliest things that we did was a prominent eye care company, not a prominent skincare company, where the new under eye creams are now microbe based. So it's not just chemicals or water based, but when your microbes work with your under eye, dark eye, dark skin, it takes away some of those things better. But the fact that microbes play a role in so many different health conditions is now becoming more and more, as Jovita said, woke. So moving on, enough of science. From my own experience, we spoke about the next wave. Typically, waves don't start as waves. And I think Shalu also spoke about it. There are linear ways. If you have to look at a linear way in which you want to do something phenomenal, this was a concept created in Everett M. Rogers' book, Diffusion of Innovation. He said, typically what happens is, you build something, and then you have early adopters, and after early adopters, you have the early majority. And that's where what's called the crossing the chasm comes in, because then you have a chasm. So after your early majority, you really need to get to the large majority, and most people don't get to the large majority of users. So this is a linear process. And typically, by the time you get your late majority and your, what's called the laggards, after you cross the chasm, that's when your reach is, wherever it's what you want to do, where you want to be. This is a linear approach of, launching products, getting customers, all of that. There's a non-linear approach. And this is called the paradigm shift. This is Thomas Kuhn, another economist. Both these are theories of economies. So Kuhn spoke about, when you start something, this is where you are. And then what happens is you build it. It's slowly, that's what he's called the model. Model starts building. Science, science is what he's called. Typically a product starts building. Then there's a drift. Because after a while, people really don't consume it. There's a drift. And after the drift comes what he calls a crisis. Because something happens when it's stagnant. So this is where Schumpeter's or even Shiva's creative destruction comes in. Either you will kill it and create something new, or you will change it. And this is where I guess the earlier speaker spoke about how Zomato and all the others change things. That's called the revolution that happens. And then you have the paradigm shift. So these are both. One is the linear mechanism. If you have to start something as big as a wave, you need to start somewhere. And the other is the non-linear mechanism. The other thing that I want to talk to you in the context of business is typically most entrepreneurs, including myself, we solve something and we think, hey, great, I have a product. This is what classic youngster businesses think of as saying, I've got a solution, therefore I've solved a problem, now I've got a product. But that's not how it is. A pilot or that you have or early customers that you have doesn't mean adoption. That comes in the next phase, which is the product and the market fit. You go beyond pilots, you get into adoption. You make sure it is not just one customer, two customers, you can do things at scale. And this is where the difference is. Typically, when you get to solving for something, you think you have a great product, but no, you're just solving a problem. You're just solving for an n is equal to 1 or an n is equal to 5. But that's not sufficient to take it to a product. And you require that, to make things, this is the difference between having a simple product and that whole, what do you call it, disruptive innovation. To do disruptive innovation, you need to hustle and create the markets. It's not sufficient just to have a product. You need to go beyond that. And like in today's world, what we are also realizing is it's not just sufficient to build products. You need to build audiences. Great founders don't just create great products. They start building for audiences. They start building audiences. That's what we now have today. And these are things that you need to start looking off as you're creating the next wave. I'm going to end here. So in summary, we live in a deeply interconnected world. In far more ways than you can believe, and this interconnection is only going to get more. This interdependence is only going to get more. When you're starting to build, if you're starting to build anything, if you're starting to think of building, you need to start looking at systems which are just beyond what you're building. The next wave, regardless of whether it's health or is about you. It's deeply personal, especially in health. It's deeply personal. It's precise, it's proactive, it's preventive. If it's health, it's preventive. Otherwise, it's proactive. You take anything that's going on, it's about getting more data, understanding you better, and tailoring it to you. And this is, I don't know if the video was played, but this is I got from the Maya video. It says, shape desire. Create that. It's not just about creating the product. You need to craft that story. You need to craft that narrative, shape the desire. Waves don't rise from quiet water. You need to make that noise. You need to stand up and shout, perhaps, or come up here and talk. So that's what's necessary for disruptive innovation. That's what's necessary for systems. Thank you very much.